What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. With your host here, Dano, giving you the best content you're going to find on the internet. I promise you, if you stay for 10 minutes, you're going to stay for the entire episode because this episode that we have today is really much in alignment in what's going on in the world, how everything is so peaceful and positive, right? After all the events that have been happening, I decided to have this episode for everybody to come together and just to kind of have some, tips and ideas and reminders on how we should be treating ourselves and how we should be treating others during these times of change. And I really wanted to have this episode because I think a lot of us or a lot of other people have really gone off the rails in what it means to have that, happiness, that personal happiness, and to uplift others, right? Because, like I said, during this time of change, a lot of people really, I don't know why it's looking a little blurry right now, but like I said, I don't know why people are acting off the rails like they're going nuts. So I just wanted to have this for everybody as well. Let me just come up here to the camera and focus it up a little bit. I don't know what's going on. So let's see. Hopefully this fixes it. And I think we should be ready to rock. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Why not? So yeah, here we go. So what's going on to my positivity posse? Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here, whether you're watching live or on the replay, for tuning in and hearing all of the great content that we have planned for you guys for today. Hello, Jeanette Ramos, for dropping that hashtag positivity posse. Thank you for the comment on the shirt. Appreciate it. We've been upgrading the wardrobe here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Shane, so great to see you. What's up, my guy? I hope everything has been going great with you in your life as well. I know you've had a busy year, so my hat's off to you and congratulations to everything that you've done. Lou says hashtag positivity posse right here. Thank you so much for dropping the hashtag positivity posse. We really do appreciate it every single time. So there's been a lot that has been in the works. We're not going to dive into it just yet. You know that we have to have our time together here with me and the positivity posse. But man, on Monday, a really big release is happening. My first ever book launch that I'm really not releasing. Well, yeah, I guess my chapter is releasing. My Good Juju, The Weird and Wonderful Within will be releasing on 11/11. And I am alongside, I think, 25 other authors or 26 other authors. And we each have a chapter that have come together to really talk about our story and about our journey. And I know for my chapter specifically, I wrote about the value that we place on everything that happens in our lives, right? So, like this, a lot of people have placed the recent events that have transpired. They put they give that a lot of power over themselves, right? And they're all going nuts. They're all going crazy, and some people are happy, some people are sad. It doesn't matter if you don't allow it to have that power over you. So that's what my chapter is all about, and it's very fitting. And it's coming out on 11/11 as well. Thank you so much for saying congratulations. We really appreciate it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir is right. That took a lot of overcoming my own struggles, right? Because I never even thought that I would even be coming out with a book. And later on this year, we're coming out with another journal as well. But even for the first one, I was like, I had those limiting beliefs, like nobody's gonna want to read this. I don't have anything that I want to say to anybody that they don't already know, and all those things that I had to overcome. But with the wonderful and amazing Misty Lee, she's been on the show a few times. She was a wonderful coach and helped me get through all of those limiting beliefs to actually put out the content and to put out the book that's coming out on 11/11. So Misty Lee, really big shout out to you. Thank you so much for everything that you've done. And we'll continue to do, right? Because it's not just a one and done thing. We've been working together. So thank you so much. Let's go. Let's go. Is right. Tell them to roll the dice. That's what I'm saying. 6 or 8, baby. You got to go for the 6 or 8. That's the strategy. And yeah, he's talking about craps. If you guys don't know, not that I'm a gambler or anything, but me and a few of my people, we've been going on the meta quest and just been playing with each other. It's been so nice as well. Which is interesting that you bring that up because that is what we're going to be talking about for today. I know I have to do a little bit better when it comes to that online community as well. And this little, I'll tell you when in the episode that I'm speaking to myself specifically. We got to be transparent all the time. But yeah, so just a little bit of an overview. I'm actually gonna show the end as a recap, but this is what we're gonna be talking about for today. Here's this, like I said, this is a recap, and I'll play this later on in the episode, but this kind of summarizes everything. So we're gonna be talking about recognizing how we have been programmed and conditioned. Number two, we're going to be talking about understanding the actions behind the stories behind others' actions, developing internal compassion, and then finally leading by example. So all of these things, yes, you can understand and see that there is an umbrella to it, but we're going to go into the nuances and the strategies as well, right? We're not just going to be talking the whole time and talking at you. I actually have, tips. Here's just an example of a tip. And then here's a strategy that we're going to be going throughout the entire episode. So stick around for the entire thing because we have tips, strategies, and everything that you're going to need in order to take all of the things that I'm talking about and all of the things that you already know and to take it out into the real world and actually apply it as well. So let's start from the beginning now, right? So I feel like, no, I don't want to say that. I'm not going to put myself in that trap. Unity is easy to find, but you need to know where to find it. And I know when it comes to some people, they might ask this question, why is unity hard to find? Well, number one, I don't believe that it's hard to find. Number one, when you have that internal unity within yourself and your mind, body, and spirit are all in one and they're all aligned and they're unified, that's the first place you need to check, right? And if it's not unified and it's not in alignment, you need to do the work in order to make sure it is in alignment, right? And all the stuff that we talk about on Weekly Dose of Dano TV, every single week, we have given you the keys in order to make sure that's in alignment. So if you have any questions on what you need to do to get into alignment, check out any other episode and that will point you in the right direction as well. But, when I wrote this, I guess I should have phrased it to how can we find unity? Where can we find unity? So, like I said, number one, it starts within ourselves. And then number two, when you are aligned physically, mentally, and spiritually, then everything else will start to become a reflection of that inner alignment, right? So then you'll start to meet other people that are in your tribe that are going along the same path, right? That can teach you things that are right where you're at. That so many different ways that can help you boost you up even further. So you're not going to find those things if you're not in alignment with yourself first. So like I said, just be careful about how you ask those questions because even how I have it written down, it's not really the way that I should have written it. But I was just going in and writing down the notes really quick. So, all right, let's start with the first segment that we talked about, and let's dive deep into today's episode, which is recognizing that we have been conditioned and we have been programmed. So, with all of your beliefs that you believe, they've all been supported by different areas in our life, right? So if you believe one thing, whether it's a good belief, a bad belief, or an indifferent belief, with the power of social media, the algorithm has been trained to feed you more of whatever it is that you believe. So if you have a positive belief to say, like I said, where unity is everywhere, you can develop self-confidence, you can learn anything it is that you want. If you say those things out loud and you interact with more of those videos on social media specifically, that is feeding you more of what you think to be true. So that is in a way you being conditioned. And let me not say you because it's us, right? I'm not exempt from it, but this is how we've been conditioned. And we need to understand that if somebody has a different belief, whatever it is, it might be a spiritual belief, it could be a political belief, it can be a food belief, right? All of these things, all of these people have been fed more information by social media to support their claim. So I've seen it time and time again where it's like, how can somebody possibly believe XYZ? Well, they have an immense amount of information that has been presented to them that further solidifies their belief, right? And beliefs are like a table. If you have more information, that's adding more legs to that table, and when they have more information and more legs on that table, what does the table become? The table becomes stronger, so it's harder to break down those beliefs that they do have as well. So that is really big as well to understand that we've all been fed different information. And it doesn't have to, let me not demonize and say that social media is all bad, right? Because it can be different things in our lives. It can be we've been conditioned and programmed by our own family members. If they've, given you ideas and beliefs that are not supportive and is not encouraging to, follow your dreams or to give you that self-esteem, then yes, you have been conditioned in a negative light by your family members, communities as well. If you allow it, they can condition you, right? If you understand that you are not going to succumb to your environment, if you live in a bad environment, then it can condition you, but you have to put that value on it to say, okay, I'm not going to fall for this trap. I'm not going to, for me specifically, right? I grew up in Camden, New Jersey, and it was a very, rough neighborhood to grow up in, and it's, still is, it's getting better. But if I were to allow those, gangs or the drugs or, the fighting and all that stuff that was in my area, my community, if I would have believed it and let that condition me, then I would become a product of my environment, which a lot of people say that they become, but because they let them have that power over them. But like I said, conditioning can be more than just social media and technology. It can be people, it can be ideas, so and so. So now that we've discovered what it is, oh my God, Chris is here, man. I'm super excited. What's going on, Chris? So great to see you. I love to see you, man. I hope everything's been going great with your end of the in your world. Lou, thank you so much for saying that. But yeah, so like I said, appreciate you so much. So let's get moving to my tips and my strategies. So we understand this, where it comes from, how it can be affecting you. But here's my tip. My first tip to you right here is to remove assumptions and judgments about others. So, number one, these assumptions that we have about other people, they can be again in the positive light or the negative light. So, I don't want to really bring politics into this, and I'm not going to. But a lot of people think that if you do one decision or if you make a certain decision, then they make all these other assumptions about you that, oh, he must be this, he must be that. And that could be anything, right? Think about clothing, for example. If you were to buy a Gucci belt and you're wearing, all designer clothes, the assumption that people make from you or make about you is that you have a lot of money and that you're rich. It's not always the case that that may be true. You may have just wanted to splurge on a specific item or you wanted to spend a little bit more money on your car, right? And it doesn't mean that you're balling, you're the richest person in the world. You just like to, invest in some quality items sometimes. So remove that assumption that you have about others and about yourself. I mean, this is such a hard thing to do because we all do it so easily. We have those judgments that we have, and it can be a good or a bad way. I know I do it all the time, but through my practice of meditation and through me consciously improving myself, I do notice that I do judge. Um, Let me rephrase that. I do judge on the initial thought, but I'm conscious and I'm aware of that thought that does come up, and I'm able to reframe it actually right on the instant, right? Now, you can make the claim that the judgments that you do have is based on experience, but former experiences doesn't dictate future experiences as well, or the things that will happen in the future. So, like I said, this is a lot harder to do and to be conscious and aware of. But I promise you, just with this tip, when you remove those assumptions and judgments about others, is going to make yourself so much more happier, peaceful, prosperous, all the great things that you could think of, um, because you're eliminating that conditioning that we have all been accustomed to. I see two comments right here. Just want to talk about here. Let's see. Having a burrito while washing. I'm so happy to hear that you're nourishing your body. That sounds great. I recall Jason mentioned the same thing. Well, cowboy, what don't I see? Um, an experience is just a single perspective, not the full truth. And exactly, I'm so glad. See, this, Chris, this is why I love you, man. That second half of what you said, it's not the full truth. A lot of people think that everything that they consume is the full truth, but that's only one half of the story, one quarter of the story. Or if you don't do your research, then that's just a tenth of the story. And I know that we're all so busy in our lives trying to make money, trying to raise a family, trying to, develop a family and establish relationships, with, trying to get into a relationship and all these things. It's so hard to really discover what the full truth is. And another big point is that the truth is not always outside of you. The truth is within you, right? I know and I firmly believe that we are linked to a higher power and a higher being. So when we find that introspection and we try to find the truth within ourselves, that's the full truth. Everything that's kind of outside of here has been tailored to their perspective, as we mentioned earlier. So it's really hard to find the truth out there because obviously, if it's not going to make you money or if it's not going to heal people, it seems to be that that is what's being pushed. And if those things are doing the opposite of what we just mentioned, it's not going to be pushed out, right? And I know you could talk about that with the medical industry. You can talk about that in any industry, but just be careful to understand that the truth is not always outside of you, and you're like Chris said, you're not always going to get the full truth as well. So, in order to kind of deprogram in ourselves and to remove that conditioning, my second tip to you guys is to reflect on how we have been contributing to the division. There was something that I saw on Facebook the other day where it wasn't even the other day, it was today, where this person that I guess I'm friends with, they said one thing that was really, really extreme in their most recent post. But I scrolled down and I was like, I wonder if this person has always been like this. Literally 2 posts before, it was the exact opposite, talking about love and talking about inclusion and this and that. But when we understand, we don't even kind of reflect that we have been contributing to the negative emotions and to the negative things going on in the world, right? It's so easy to gloss over it because it happens so quickly. It's probably instinctively that we do react in these certain ways. But we need to understand that nobody's perfect, and we have all contributed to the things that aren't inclusive within our communities, within our relationships, and to the world as well. And like I said, I know I'm guilty of it too. And that's why I'll tell you guys a little bit later on how I think that I can definitely work on how I can contribute more to the inclusivity into the world as well. So those are my 2 tips. But now I got to give you the strategy, because the strategy is a little bit different than a tip. A tip is kind of just like, the idea of what to be mindful for, but the strategy is actually how to implement it. So when you do feel that you are being conditioned and you're being programmed and you are being triggered by that conditioning, the best thing that you can do is take a second and breathe. I know that's so hard to do because at that time you have this flood of emotions that's coming at you and that you're emitting out there into the world. But we need to take a second to see why we are being triggered and notice when we are being triggered. And I know that's happened to me. And I guess, like I said here, defensive or judgmental, we can take a second to breathe as well. But I know that triggered is kind of the hardest one to do because that is when we are experiencing the height of that negative emotion. And I know, like I said, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, maybe about like 3 weeks ago, but there was somebody that got me, they really got under my skin. And I don't even know why, because the comment that they made was just so off and just so trivial and just not true. But for some reason, I guess it was my ego. I kind of bit into it, and I actually had to phone a friend to say, "Yo, why am I being triggered so much by this?" And like I said, he was able to help me understand that it was my ego being triggered, and if it's not true, why am I giving it any energy anyway? And I said, I talk about that all the time, and it's so true. But like I said, if had I not breathed and had I not had that support system that I can call up and say, "Hey, I need some help right now," who knows? I mean, obviously, I would have gotten over it, but it would have taken me a lot longer to get over the thing that was said, which wasn't even true. But it just expedites the process. And yeah, so like I said, this is a lot easier said than done, but it can be done so consistently and so easily once we practice this with more reps. You can make that claim to be like the gym, right? When we go to the gym and we're lifting weights, let me take this down. I kind of want to show off a little bit, but when we're lifting weights, right? Over time, that weight that you're lifting gets easier. It's the same thing with the strategies that you have in place with yourself. The more that you have them there and that you're conscious of those practices, the easier that they get to implement into your life as well. I see one comment here. We says, "Great advice, Dano. Thank you. I appreciate it so much." Yeah, that's what I'm all about. I love giving you guys, advice and also strategies that we can do in order to implement it. Because have you guys? I know I've done it. Have you guys ever looked at social media or YouTube videos, and it's like, yeah, it'll be like a David Goggins or like Tony Robbins or all of these guys, and you're like, yeah, the thing that this person is saying is so right. But after you scroll to the next video or you go out into the real world, it's like, well, you never gave me the tools that I needed or the strategies in order to implement it. And that's why I have these tips and implements as well. So thank you for saying that, Lou. Really appreciate it. I just want to go to a quick commercial break to hear from our first sponsor. And then after that, we're going to be diving into why we need to come together more now, more than ever, and how we can do that as well. So here's a word from our first sponsor. It Takes a Village Housing, and we'll be right back after a word from our first sponsor.
takes a village about keeping our families together.
God bless this organization.
Well, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. And thank you to It Takes a Village Housing for sponsoring Weekly Dose of Dano TV and all the great work that you have done inside of the Camden community and surrounding areas as well. So let's move on to the second segment, if you want to call it that, for today. And here it is. It's understanding the stories behind others' actions. So number one, you'll never understand the full reason as to why somebody does something, but you have to be mindful that there is a series of events that led up to whatever that person is experiencing at that moment. And sometimes it's not always rainbows and sunshines and butterflies as to why that person is reacting that way. But understand that there is a story. It's not your job. This is a little tricky and a little nuanced because it's not your job to try to understand the full story as to why somebody is doing something, but just be aware that there is a story. So, if there's a lot of, negative attachment to that story, a lot of people don't know how to kind of harness that and not lash out at other people. So it's not your job to understand why the things are happening, but just be aware that it stems from somewhere. Uh, here you go, right here. He says, It Takes a Village Housing commercial always makes me dance. He says, bop in his head. Love it. So happy that It Takes a Village Housing is in existence and is able to have your head bopping with their commercial as well. So, yeah, so like I said, understanding the story behind others' actions. So, let me give you my first tip as to how we can be more cognizant of that story. And I know these next two tips that I'm going to show you, they are derived from the four agreements, but I'm going to put my own little spin on it. So just to let you know, if they sound a little familiar, that's where the inspiration came from. So right here, don't take it personally. The person isn't doing it to you specifically. We have to remove the ego. I know a lot of people say that, and they think that a person's actions are directly a result of that person because of their existence, right? A lot of, let's just say you're on the street, right, and somebody is acting mean to you because of XYZ or something that they had happen to them today. You don't have to think that that person is taking it out on you because they think that you're a negative person or they're trying to take advantage of you. It's not always about yourself. Like, yes, you are the center of your world and you may think that, but there's so many things that go on in other people's lives that they're probably not even thinking about you. They had such a bad day that they just want to go home and they're in a rush to do it. Obviously, I'm not saying you got to tolerate, anything that is like physical harm or verbal abuse, but some things you just got to let it go. Right? You got to remove that ego to think that, oh, well, I'm going to show this person how tough I am and they're not going to get over on me or they're not going to disrespect me. Disrespect and all that stuff is all made up. It's all stems from your ego, right? Because you think that you got to defend yourself from what somebody says to you. And like I said, this is all barring, physical abuse, because obviously, you got to protect yourself. But I'm not talking about that. There's so many things that people like. If somebody calls you stupid or ugly, what does that matter? Why are you placing so much value on that other person's words? Like, I mean, I know why, right? Because I guess a small bit of us actually believes what that other person is saying. And that's why we can start to think that way. But yeah, man, just don't, the things that people are doing are not specifically related to you. That's always a negative thing. And we have to understand that as well. Somebody might just be having a bad day. Somebody that might be their belief in the world, but just be cognizant of it. Like I said, I'm not saying that you got to, tolerate all these negative things in your life. You don't, because you got to stand up and you got to build barriers for yourself. But that person's life, the reason that they're acting that way, is a reflection of themselves. And that's why we're going to go to number two. Tip number two is that everything that people do and say is a reflection of themselves. Somebody is coming up to you on the street, and they're angry or they're pissed off. Well, obviously their actions is a result of how they're feeling on the inside. And that can not always be for, like, let me not only use a person on the street as an example, that it can be in healthy aspects as well, right? If somebody truly learns how to love you, and they're a very supportive friend, and they know how to talk your language in order to support you, then that means that inside themselves they had that self-confidence, and they know what it truly means to support somebody else because they support themselves. And it can go in two different ways. And I guess I've been using kind of like the negative aspect of these ideas because, a lot of people are responding negatively to some events that have happened out into the past. And it doesn't always have to be about that main event that you see. It can be a series of other things that they've been going through in their lives as well. So always remember that everything that people say and everything that people do is ultimately a reflection of themselves. It really has nothing to do with you. So going back to the first one, you don't have to take it personally. And I love those two because they go in tandem with each other as well. So let me hear about this. So we got David in the house. Not the cornhole champ because I'm the cornhole champ, but David, it's so great to see you. I'm not gonna show that comment, even though I already did. But I have to order more. All right, I didn't know you were the size that you were. I only have a large, and you're not a large, so I still got to work on that. Yes, I love that. We do have to go tailgating soon, very soon. So they're having their conversation in there, and here Christopher, he says taking it personally is ego on both sides, really, and an opportunity to examine your own reactions as to why you react this way. Of course, right? If you have low self-esteem and you're reacting negatively to what somebody says, you have to really dive deep as to why you have developed this low self-esteem and dismantle those belief systems. And alternatively, if you're reacting positively to certain interactions and events that are transpiring in your life, then that's how you know you have a healthy belief system. So this can be done. This takes an entire episode to talk about within itself. But Chris, you're so right. Um, you are so right. And yes, it has not been a couple of years. It's been like a few months, which is still a long time. But at least that's better than a couple of years. But yeah. So going back to the next one is this one. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, like I said, no, wait, we already talked about that one. Okay, here we go. So the strategy for this one is to think about the story behind the story. And it's really removing yourself from that place of ego to understand that everybody has their own life and everybody's living their own experiences. A thing that I like to say is shoulder to shoulder, we stand a world apart, right? Not everybody thinks the way that you do. Not everybody has the same belief systems that you do. So understand that is derived from something, and it not everything is because of you, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Then I'm not doing my job if it doesn't make sense, right? All right, so we're going to talk about the next one on why we should promote unity and inclusion and just being respectful to one another. And a big way to do this is to develop internal compassion. Internal compassion is really hard to do because most of the time we don't realize that we're not doing it because the chatter in our head can be very negative or it can be very positive. But if we're not aware of what that mental chatter is in our own head, then we can't understand if we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction as well. So the tip number one, like I said, well, I didn't say it yet, but tip number one is we should focus on our healing first. If we don't give ourselves grace, then we can't give that to others. And it's the same thing. If you want to use grace, you can use that to everything else. You can use that for love. You can use that for financial decisions. You can use that for literally everything. So just make sure that we are focusing on our healing first. And I know a lot of people out there, is so easy to say, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. But if we're not doing that and we're not ensuring that in ourselves, other people are a reflection of that thing that we're not doing within ourselves. So it's easy to point at them to say, you're not doing this. But ultimately, when we think about it, the reason that we're upset or angry with other people is not because of what their actions are. It's because of what's going on inside of ourselves. Because a lot of people are only we interact with them to show us more of what's going on inside of our own world. So if you have somebody that's you're in a relationship and they're not treating you right, well, you have to think, number one, that you allowed them to train you that way and to treat you that way. But number two, if you don't have that love within inside of yourself, most likely you're interacting in that relationship from a negative point of view. You're probably taking it out on the other person. And then they're just reflecting back what you've been giving them. So that's with everybody, though. It doesn't have to be specifically to that relationship. But like I said, we need to focus and heal ourselves, and then we will see and help guide others in order to see what that healing process is like as well. So remember, give yourself grace first, and then we can give it to others. But if you don't have it within yourself, you can't give it out. And you can mask it, you can try, but it's not gonna. You can fake it. A lot of people say fake it till you make it, but that's one of the dumbest things that I've heard. Because obviously, if you're faking it for so long, you're not going to sustain your happiness. And if you don't sustain your happiness, obviously, you're going down the wrong path as well. And ultimately, if you're faking it and using that place of ego to try to get to where you want to be, that's not fueling your car, so to speak, with the right gas, right? And that's just an analogy. Take that how you want. So the tip number two, in order to develop internal compassion, is we have to notice our inner dialogue. And I know that one I just mentioned. If we're not aware of how we're speaking to ourselves, then we can't change it, right? It's the same thing. This can be something as basic as making a house repair. Because I know David is a lead at that. He is a master when it comes to working with his hands. And if he's not aware of the things that needs to be fixed at his projects in his own house or with his clients, then how can he know to fix that thing that needs to be fixed? You don't, or you can't, because you can't pinpoint it. And it's the same thing with our inner dialogue. If we're not noticing how we're speaking to ourselves, then everybody else is going to determine how we speak to ourselves. If you don't have that confidence and that knowledge to say, well, I have been speaking kind of shitty to myself, everybody else is not going to provide you with that same guidance and that love. They're going to come in, they're going to try to take advantage of you if they're a shitty person. Or even if that person that does try to come to you is speaking with you in love and they are trying to support you, you won't feel as though you're worthy of it. So you'll end up chasing that person away, or you'll end up shutting them out because you don't have that within yourself. And that is a truth bomb that I want to drop for you guys, because it works in both directions as well. That's why we need to be cognizant of where we're at and make sure we are going on the right path as well. Chris says right here, he says the greatest difficulty is the mental resistance to things that arise and the underlying assumption that they should not. I got to read that one again. Sounds great, but let me read it one more time. The greatest difficulty is the mental resistance to things that arise and the underlying assumption that they should not. Oh, I like that. Okay, it clicked. All right. So the underlying, I'm going to take the second half first and then we'll go to the first, but it says the underlying is something that they should not. And the reason that we think that it shouldn't is because we have this grandiose idea of what life should be, right? If these things show up in our lives that happen, that we don't prefer them the way that they are happening in our lives, we are constantly thinking that everything great should be happening to us and that, oh, this can't happen to me, or this shouldn't be happening to me. But we need to redefine that. Why is this thing happening to me? And put a positive meaning to why this thing is happening to you. Like he says, Eckhart Tolle, it says the people assume that these things should not be happening to us. But number one, we need to understand, or we need to assign the value that these things are happening in order to teach us more about ourselves. So if something is happening in the way that we wouldn't prefer it to happen, put a positive meaning on it, and you can extract a positive extraction or a positive meaning from that situation. And that in turn will guide you to the positive direction. So that can be anything, right? It can be, why is this person coming up to me on the street and calling me an idiot? Well, if we assign to that value that that person is showing me something that I don't believe within myself, then number one, I can choose not to accept it. But if you think that you actually believe that person, this is giving you the opportunity to change it in the positive direction. So ultimately, is this the underlying assumption that they should not? So the reason we need to assign a positive value to it and understand that this is an opportunity for us to go into the positive direction. So remember that this is an opportunity to lead us into the right path. And I don't want to say the right path because the path that we're on is the right path, because if it wasn't the right path, then we wouldn't be on that path. But I hope that makes sense to you guys. It's a lot to kind of digest just with this one quote alone. And then the beginning is the greatest difficulty is the mental resistance to the things that arise. And I'm not sure about that half, because that could be his greatest difficulty, right? If somebody else has a different greater difficulty, then that's kind of subjective. But I do agree with the second half of Eckhart Tolle, and yeah, he's great read. He talks about the power of the now. He talks about so many enlightening things. So if you want another form of media to look at Eckhart Tolle, and also Christopher Casson as well. I appreciate you so much. So now the strategy, really quickly, into how to develop internal compassion is this: start with intention at the start of the day and end with reflection. So in order to develop that and to be on that path of internal compassion, we need to set the intention, like you say here, or like I say here, at the beginning of the day. So that can be anything from prayer, that can be meditation, that can be consuming positive content in order to develop that belief that we want to believe, right? So if you have low self-esteem, which I just talked about before, do all the things and set that intention at the beginning of the day to make sure that we can develop that positive self-esteem. Or if your intention is to be nicer to people, you can write down 3 different things that you can do in order to be nicer to somebody. You can start with that prayer, like you said. Like I said, if you believe in God or if you believe in a higher power, ask Him to show you what that means to be nicer to other people. And obviously, at the end of the day, you can take this time to think, okay, did I achieve what I wanted to do for the day? If you say yes, great, keep on doing more of that. If not, now you know where to change, and the instances and the perspectives that you can, since you're reflecting on it, you know where you can change and be better at that part of the day. So we're going to hear a word from our second sponsor. And then finally, we're going to be talking about the fourth segment, which is leading by example, which is probably, this might be, in my opinion, the hardest one to actually implement, because when we're in the heat of it and we're going out into the world, we can lose our direction, and we can lose that integrity that we have within ourselves, only if we let it, though. So this one might be the hardest. Let me know what you think if this is the hardest, but if not, I just want to show you guys what we have talked about before. So number 1, recognizing that we have been programmed. Number 2, understanding the stories behind the others' actions. Number 3, developing internal compassion. And number 4 is the leading by example. So let me know which one you believe the hardest one is while we play a word from our sponsor. And I want to hear all about your guys' comments, ideas, questions, concerns, everything. So leave it here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV, and we will talk about it in the comments as well, as we have done with everybody else's comments. So we're going to hear a word from our second sponsor, which is Great Success, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
At Grade Success, it's our job to make sure that your child succeeds in school regardless of the subject or grade level. Our tutors are trained professionals who know how to promote learning and encourage results. Whether you are looking for help with SAT, ACT prep, private and group tutoring, K-3 reading programs for your child, or educational consulting and college counseling, here at Grade Success, we can help you find the right answer. Visit gradesuccess.com to learn more about our in-person and online program options. Grade Success, where your child's success is our business.
So everybody, we are here. Thank you so much to Great Success for sponsoring Weekly Dose of Dano TV. But we are on our last segment for tonight. And if you didn't see it or you're just tuning in, here it is. We're going to be talking about leading by example. But I want to talk about Chris's comment. Well, Lou, you're welcome for all the great advice that I've provided to you guys and that you've provided to me, right? Because this is a mutual experience, and I'm so excited and grateful that you guys are here whether you're watching live or on the replay, leaving your comments so we can talk about your ideas, your perspectives, my ideas, my perspectives, so we can come together to fuel these discussions to learn more about ourselves in the process as well. So thank you all for being here as well. And finally, before we get into leading by example, I want to talk about this because I touched on it a little bit, but I was reading this during the break. I kind of cheated, but here it is. When you attach the label of right and wrong on your path, you miss the reality of the path and lean towards an imaginary concept of what it should be and what it shouldn't be. So I talked about this a little bit when I say that if it's showing up on your path, it's for a reason. And if you think that you're not on that path, you are on that path where you need to be, or else it wouldn't be showing up in your life. So, Chris, I really like this because it takes it down and narrows it. It pinpoints it a little bit more as to why we should be cognizant of what we label good and bad, right and wrong, left, right, up and down. So thank you for sharing that too, because I firmly believe that we are always on the right path at all times, even when events transpire that happen the way we wouldn't prefer them to be. And notice how I say that, right? Because I know a lot of people would prefer their path to be on, as easy as possible, or they prefer their path to be filled with, a bunch of riches. And, some people prefer a lot of women in their path or whatever it is. But everything is happening exactly on your path, how it needs to happen for you to develop to be the best person that you've come on this earth to be, and to learn more about yourself and to receive all of the great things that this world has to offer. So that, even just that, like, that might be me putting a positive assignment to it, but that's still saying that the things that are happening in my life need to happen, in order for me, like I said, in order to extract the best things that I want from this life. So there it is. Now we're going to talk about the fourth one that I mentioned, is about leading by example. Like I said, it's pretty difficult to do when other people are trying you, or they're trying to talk down to you, or conversely, if you're hanging around people that are not leading you in that right direction, then it can be pretty hard to do it as well. I mean, there's numerous factors, but make sure that you're doing it and you are leading by example. So understand, it starts with me, and I don't mean me as Dano. I mean me as the person watching this. It starts with you, right? If you want to, I forgot who said this quote. It might have been like Nelson Mandela. It says, "Go out and be the change that you want to see in this world," and that is a great way of phrasing it. But think about it: if you're not leading by example, then we will have so many people out there that's constantly pointing the blame at others. And when we never take that accountability to look at ourselves to see how we could have improved better, number one, we won't grow in that positive direction to learn from ourselves. And number two, we won't show other people how to lead in this world. And I know all the greatest teachers that you can think of, if you want to think about Buddha, if you want to think about Jesus, if you want to think about whatever the great leaders are in this world, had they not led by example, who knows where we would be at today, number one. But number two, we wouldn't learn the right way to think and to act, in order to achieve that self fulfillment, or that happiness, or that peace, or whatever it is that you want to do. We wouldn't know how to do it had they not led by their example. And that can be for anything too. Like, even, it doesn't have to be all spiritual and deep. It can be something as simple as business, right? That is why I think, technology and the internet is so great, because you have these people that have built multi-billion, multi-million dollar companies, and they're going to show you, to give you the tips on what you need in order to achieve that thing. So it starts with you, and that's how we can take that to go forward, to lead by example, knowing that it starts with us, and knowing that we are the change that we want to see in this world. Number two is, don't give your power away. So when you lead by example, this is so this is a little bit tricky, right? Because with other people's words and their actions, if you assign a positive value, and you assign a value that's so great to these people, what you're doing is you're giving them the power over yourself. So this can be a myriad of different ideologies. Like, you can have a lot of people, it seems as though, politics and religion and all of these things, people give so much value to it that it starts to consume them, and they become identified with all of these things that are out there in the world. And a lot of the time, those things that they identify themselves with have a lot of negative connotations to them. and that's just objective, right? Because if you think about, specifically religion, right? If you think about the way that they've operated in the past, that has been assigned with things that we don't prefer today or we don't accept today. And all of these things, honestly, if you just are so engrossed in it and you focus on it 100%, then it'll start to consume you. Now, I want to caveat this to say, obviously, these things do happen in the world, but there's no point in being engrossed and engulfed with it so much that it starts to take over, number one, your peace, but number two, that it takes over, yeah, ultimately your peace. Because there's other things that it will start to take over, like your relationships or the way that you feel about yourself or your business. But ultimately, we have to protect our peace and our well being, number one. So if we're not cognizant of it and we give all of that the power over ourselves, then we don't protect our peace. Right here, it says random watching the Bitcoin price shoot to the moon. Yes, I've noticed that too. I know a lot of people are big into the crypto world, so I'm not well versed or I'm not knowledgeable enough to talk about this, but I'm happy to hear if you are invested in Bitcoin that you're making that money as well. Jeanette says, thank you for all that you do. Thank you guys for showing up and for being here with me, because if you guys weren't here, I would do it probably in a different, fashion or a different way. But it's just so fun to be here with you guys as well, my positivity posse. So thank you for being here, because you guys make it a lot easier to be here and a lot more fun. So thank you for everything that you guys do as well. And thank you, you guys, everybody, for all the things that we probably don't see on a day-to-day basis. So that can be as simple as giving a stranger a compliment, making somebody's day, just offering a smile to somebody. So it can be as big or as small as I'm giving you the compliment for. You can use it for whatever capacity you want. I just want to say thank you all for the things that people probably don't say thank you for, that they don't see that you do behind closed doors or out in the open. So thank you so much for that as well. And finally, like I said, when it comes to leading by example, we have the last strategy for the night. And here it is. Develop my advice to you guys, a strategy that you should do is to develop 3 non-negotiables that you'll commit to in order to lead by example. So this can be as simple as, like when it comes to doing 3 so like, okay, for an example, like today I'm not going to let anybody, get to me. I'm not going to let anybody bring me down. It could be something as simple as that, or you can have different other strategies that you can use as well, right? So you can say, I have it written down here because these are some strategies that I wanted us all to have. So here it is. Let me see. Of course, right now that I need it, I can't find it. But anyway, make sure that you are setting that reminder to yourself in order to develop those 3 non-negotiables. And that could be anything. Like, okay, if you want to put it in your diet, you can say, all right, I'm not going to have that bar of chocolate today. Or if you're going out and you're talking to somebody, I'm not going to say that mean thing that I really want to say. I'm going to practice biting my tongue in order to help other people out. And it can be these things that when you develop this and you practice that self-control, number one, and you practice that resilience, that if anything happens to you on your day or in your day, you can know how to overcome it and to really make sure that it's not being an issue on your everyday journey. So I want to play a word from our last sponsor because I want to bring those 3 non-negotiables that I have written down for you guys. But don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back after a word as a thank you guys for you being here and really contributing to this great content. So we're gonna play our Thanksgiving one, and we'll be right back because I really want to find that list for you guys. All right. I think I found it when it comes to leading by example. Okay, here it is. Found it. Perfect. All right. So when it comes to implementing those 3 non-negotiables that we talked about, here we go. Let me put this on the screen again. And here it is. So some of these things can be like respecting others, practicing gratitude, or staying open-minded. And I know these things may sound like simple and abstract, but whatever you define that thing to be, this is how you are leading by example. When you show yourself, hey, these are the three things that I will not compromise for today, you develop that, like I said, gratitude for yourself for implementing these things, but that mental resilience as well. So I appreciate you guys so much for being here. This has been absolutely amazing hearing all of your comments, your questions, your concerns, your ideas. This is what Weekly Dose of Dano is all about, having these conversations in the positive light as well, because that's what I want to do in the positive sense. And every time we have the guest on, it's always in a positive light. Now, the stories that we do talk about may not always be enlightening, or the events that have transpired may not always be, rainbows and always happy events. But it's when we assign the positive value to these things that happen, we will extract a negative value as well. So let's say if you're just tuning in for the first time and you didn't hear about everything that we talked about, these are some of the things that we talked about. Excuse me. In order to make a real difference in our world and in our lives, this is what we need to do. We need to recognize where we have been programmed and conditioned from, or how we have been conditioned. We need to understand the stories behind others' actions, develop internal compassion, and leading by example as well. This has been absolutely amazing. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out again to Misty Lee, because on Monday we will be releasing the My Good Juju, The Weird and Wonderful Within on 11/11, where you can purchase on Amazon, where it's just me and I believe 25 or 26 other authors all coming together to give our perspectives and what has worked in our lives in order to help us move and really towards that state of peace and wonderfulness and joy as well. So really be on the lookout for that. I will post it tomorrow on my social media. So if you're not following me, make sure that you are following me at Dose of Dano. I think I can take this out. Let me just flash this on the screen for the person that may not be the audio learner, but they can be the visual learner. So we have on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Instagram. It's at Dose of Dano. If you guys want to follow me, just to keep the updates going about things that are going on with the show, that's going on in my personal life, and also to hear about the book that we are releasing again on Monday. It's going to be a great time. I'm super excited. Thank you, Misty Lee, for inviting me and making this happen. And to everybody else, thank you so much for being here. So I'm just really grateful for you guys. Every single day, day in and day out, I always think about you guys. So Lou says he'll be on the lookout. Thank you again, Lou, for being here. Thank you, Jeanette, for being here as well. Christopher, for lighting it up in the comments with your wonderful ideas and your ways of thinking about certain things. And I appreciate you guys so much. So next week, we will have another show, and I'm super excited. We won't be here for Thanksgiving, obviously, because I'm going to be eating with my fat ass. Behind that dinner table is going to be a great time connecting with family as well. So we will have a show next week, so make sure you are on the lookout and stay tuned for that. And I will see you next week for another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. I'll see you next week. Peace. Oh, I hit the wrong thing. This is what I meant. I hit the wrong thing again. This is what I meant to play.